Let's go Clemson at Texas. This is the biggest spread of the first round, 11.5 points. When I'm looking at this, okay, and I think you can look at both teams for this. All right, you look at Clemson week one, and you're like, oh boy, they got spanked by Georgia. Look at that. All right, they kind of bounced back. They had a bit of a brutal loss, later in the season, found their way, clawed their way to the ACC championship game, and found a way to win against SMU. That included a Cade Klubnik kind of masterclass. You got two guys, quarterbacks, Ewers and Klubnik, rematching from when they played back in high school. Uh, I I don't think either of these quarterbacks are the best quarterbacks that are playing in this playoff right now, but I do think that these are both teams that are hungry for more because one, this next game they know is winnable against Arizona State. And then after that, who knows what can happen. I think Texas, their defense more than anything has just absolutely blown me out of the water. Their secondary, which I've questioned for a while, has looked spectacular. Week in and week out, and it doesn't matter who's put in front of their face. And if Clemson's not able to run the ball, which they haven't been able to, and I said last week, I'm like, are they just going to push the Phil Maffa button against this SMU team? Which, by the way, we are just talking about SMU's run defense. SMU said no. So did Pitt, right? I mean, it hasn't been working on the ground for Clemson recently. Okay, Phil Maffa, as much as a great player I think he is, something's just not right now. Okay, something's not right there. If Cade Klubnik cannot throw the ball on this Texas secondary, then what is this offense going to do? That's my question. Will Quinn Ewers be able to effectively move the ball down the field against Clemson's defense? I don't know that can happen either. All right. But I think I like Texas in this spot. I think I like Texas to win. I also think Texas has a chance of covering in this spot too.
Listen, I hear what you're saying, and I really do. And maybe it's just my affection for Clemson because I've had him for most of this year. I had him as an ACC future, which cash, thank you to Miami and Syracuse. But I, I don't know here. I'm gonna take Clemson here in this spot to cover, and I'll take him to win. And here's why: because I need one upset in this week because there's gonna be one out of four. I think is gonna be, and I think Texas is super vulnerable right now.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I see all the metrics defensively. I get that. And I know that talent wise, you see it on the eye test, all that stuff. And they look fantastic. They're huge. They're athletic, very well coached. All that stuff makes a ton of sense. I just think that this Clemson wide receiver core is significantly better than anything Texas has seen all year. That goes back to Oklahoma when they were decimated, Michigan, and whatever the heck they've trotted out all year long at the wide receiver position. Georgia, a position group we've talked about being a liability on that football team. Florida with a decimated quarterback room. Arkansas,
And
with
no
all that
Eugene
stuff going
Wilson.
on. No, yeah, exactly. Texas A&M, right, with some I think liabilities there in that wide receiver and potential quarterback in terms of throwing the football room. I think it'll be not a shell shock, but I think it's going to be something that you could see this defense, maybe come back down to earth just a little bit compared to what it's been because metrically it is fantastic, right? They're top against the passing defense. They're second in scoring defense. They're second in allowing 10 plus yard scrimmage plays. They're seventh in red zone touchdown allowed. They're sixth on the third down. They're really freaking good, right? And I'm not going to take that away from them. I do think this Clemson team, like sometimes you see good offense beat good defense, right? And you saw flashes of it from Clemson's wide receiver core, the young kids, TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, Antonio Williams after the catch. Like you've seen these guys get better and better throughout the season. Cade Klubnik get more and more comfortable as he's progressing through year two of this Garrett Riley system. And plus their offensive line, you talked about Phil Maffa struggling on the ground in November. A lot of that too was their offensive line kind of banged up, shuffling products in and out there. They're getting them back healthy. They got them back healthy for South Carolina. SMU maybe just has a really good run defense. Right? I do think you'll see a little bit more production there with Phil Maffa because you're going to need to. Right? Going on the road to Austin, unless you want to have a defensive performance like Clemson, like Georgia did earlier, where you just absolutely get after Quentin Ewers, you stop the run, you have all these turnovers, and you win by 2 touchdowns somehow. I don't quite see that happening for Clemson. I think you're going to have to outscore Texas a chance here. I also do think that Quinn Ewers and Texas, right, they're not great running the football. And I know Clemson's defense and running the football has not been great this year. I do think they've been banged up. I think the talent is still there in that front seven. I trust Dabo Sweeney and staff to get them ready. I think they have a couple good quarters throughout Terrell and Hunters to, you know, kind of be able to stifle, right, those maybe not elite wide receivers that Texas has. I also want to ask you this too here. In terms of the SEC, right, like how much better do you think Texas is compared to South Carolina, right? The way South Carolina finished the season.
Oh, I think South Carolina. I would take South Carolina in that football game.
So you saw Clemson, it arguably should have very easily, could have beaten that South Carolina football team just a couple weeks ago. I think it's something to monitor. I think it absolutely is. This game, I think people are kind of writing off. They see that double-digit spread. They're like, oh, this is Dabo Sweeney, blah, blah, blah. They're washed. The program's over, blah, blah. This is a different team. They've college football has passed them. I think this is a spot here where you could see Clemson come out really motivated, and we realize there's still a ton of talent on this football team. They just haven't put it all together. At times, they've been injured, all that good stuff. And by the way, Clemson just took a transfer wide receiver. So big things are
JUCO,
happening.
so
Big
it's not
things are
actually a
happening.
transfer. It was JUCO. All right, so
What at mid-season, it's a big deal, I think, for Clemson. No, I just wanted to get that in there. But and maybe I'm talking myself into it because I think there's going to be an upset, and I don't love the way Texas is playing football or have played football, but I just think this is a spot here that Clemson's going to be a lot more competitive than people think.
yeah, 11.5 is a ton of points. Not on my best bets at all. And I will play into your idea that Texas doesn't necessarily run the ball as effectively as people think. I want to go back to the Texas A&M game where Wisner ran all over at A&M,
Broke
but
the
I also
tackles.
want you to point in the direction of Texas A&M against South Carolina, against Notre Dame, right? Other teams that are physical, right, had a lot of success against that Texas A&M defensive line and linebacking core. Not to mention those DBs are pretty terrible attacking. All right, so I don't think it's crazy to think that Texas is not as effective at running the ball as maybe the metrics say. Because what are they? They're averaging like almost 5 yards a carry on the ground, which is like pretty good. Okay, but it might even be worse than that, right? Like realistically. So that's not crazy. That's not crazy. I do think Texas's defense though is legit. I know you could point at the backup quarterback they played against Florida, Texas A&M, Carson Beck maybe not playing great, getting to play another backup quarterback, which Texas for some reason gets to play backup quarterbacks, at least 4 of them every single year. Um, a banged up Taylor Green. I mean, you name it,
Davis
right?
Warren.
Davis
Michael
Warren,
Hawkins.
Michael Hawkins, right? Like, yeah, you name it. They
Brock
didn't.
Vandegrift.
I get it. Right? I get it.
Oh,
But it does feel like this defense is kind of for real. And I'm willing to bet that they will make Clemson one dimensional, where Cade Klubnik is going to have to make plays through the air. And I know, and this was something that you were right about preseason, and I was wrong about preseason. This wide receiving core is good for Clemson. But is it enough? I don't know.
yes.
Do we trust Cade Klubnik through the air enough against elite secondaries? I don't
Yeah,
know that I do.
I'll say this here. I don't want Cade Klubnik to be throwing the football a ton, right? I I think the ideal game plan is for him to be running the football. He averages about 34 attempts per game. I don't want him any higher than that. I really don't. I want to be able, if I'm Clemson, to run the football a little bit more effectively and be able to churn out clock, be able to control the possession, get third and manageable. Because, on third down, right? I know Clemson's been, or excuse me, I know Texas has been really good defensively, but Clemson is still a top 25 team on third down, right? And they're completing at a 45% clip there. Something to monitor for sure. I do think red zone has to play a huge deal for Clemson. They're not very good at converting. They're about middle of the pack in red zone touchdown percentage, turning those red zone opportunities into 7 instead of 3 or 0, right? Those are big spots too. And going over to turnovers too. I know it's hard to predict, but Clemson, second in the country, they are plus 16 turnover margin. I know That's very volatile. I know that's honestly not something that I can very count on, right? But I do think that says something about how you take care of the football at times and how you're opportunistic too, and putting other spots, putting offenses into vulnerable positions. Those are going to have to need to happen. We talked about with SMU as well. Third down, red zone, turn margin, winning those kind of key areas in these games gives you a spot to make up all those grounds, to make up the spot for maybe a little bit more talented football team than yourself, and going on the road as well. Yeah, I think this will be very interesting too.
I'll say
Do you
this
think?
about Cade Klubnik. I think he's had a great year, but he's had one game this year where he's thrown for over 250 yards against a top 50 defense. And I was against South Carolina, where he threw no touchdowns and an interception.
Do you think Cade Klubnik is a better quarterback than Quinn Ewers?
That's a really, really good question. And I don't think there's an easy answer,
I
believe
see.
it or not.
I don't think it's an easy answer. I think in order to believe that Clemson is going to win this football game, I
You have to
have to
believe that he's
believe that
better.
Cade Klubnik is better than Quinn Ewers. Exactly. I have to believe that we're going to get the Quinn Ewers that we saw against Georgia, that we saw at times against Texas A&M. Right. That's who we're going to have to get.
SMU.
SMU. Wait, they play SMU? Oh no, the Cade Klubnik against SMU. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I meant to say Quinn Ewers. We cannot get Quinn Ewers against Washington. We cannot get Quinn Ewers against Alabama a couple times now. Like those Quinn Ewers, right? If they keep him upright, he's got time to dissect, and Sark has time to draw plays up. That's where you can get in real problems for Clemson, for Texas in general. If that Quinn Ewers is playing the rest of the way, this is probably the best team in the country, right? But I just think that offense really scares me for Texas, and I can't believe I'm saying that against Sark. And I can't wait to eat my words because that's probably going to happen. They're going to put up 40 against Clemson, but I don't know. I think there's something going on there in Death Valley, over in Clemson, South Carolina.